Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is one of our fireside chats. It's part of our Work Unleashed series of conversations with executives at some of Box's top customers and some of the largest companies in the world. In this series, we talk with these leaders about how their organizations and their companies are changing the way that they work, how they serve their customers, and how they have been doing business in an increasingly digital world. My name is Rand Wacker. I'm the Vice President of Industry Solutions here at Box, which covers everything from financial services to public sector. And I'm very delighted to welcome Mike Meinolf, of the CIO from one of Box's most valued customers, Associated Bank. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike here in a second, but just did want to remind everyone, please do feel free to ask questions through the Q&A feature. Ian will be watching them, and we'd love to take questions throughout the conversation. And with that, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Rand. Mike Meinolf, I'm the Chief Information Officer at Associated Bank. And really what that means is I am in charge of driving not only the day-to-day operations from a technology perspective of our institution, but trying to drive our strategy forward, right? And, strategy does not rest for, take a break when you have pandemics or, work from home, massive shift events or any other external force, right? You have to keep going. We have to keep driving, have to keep moving. So that's really my role.
Excellent. And we'll get to some of the business lines in a second. One of the questions we always like to start off with is, do you have any trivia or facts that people might be surprised to learn about your company at all?
I do. I don't know if it'd be surprising because our headquarters in Green Bay, Wisconsin, but we have been the bank of the Packers since 1919. So we've had a relationship with Green Bay for 100 years since their inception, which I think is pretty remarkable to have that length of a relationship with any one particular customer. And so we're very proud of that fact.
That's cool. Yeah, we were just talking about Green Bay a second ago. So besides that, tell us a little bit more about the business today. What parts of banking, from personal to commercial, are you in, and who do you serve besides the Packers?
Sure. So we're a full service bank. So we are both commercial and retail, wealth management, investment services. We have a 3-state footprint. We're primarily located in the great state of Wisconsin. However, we have retail branch locations in Minnesota and in Illinois. We also have commercial loan processing facilities in Indiana, Michigan, Texas, and Ohio. So we're fairly diverse in our footprint, and Missouri. Can't forget Missouri. But for our retail footprint perspective, we're in that 3-state area in the Midwest. And really, do a good job of servicing our Midwest customers. In fact, we're the #1 mortgage lender in the state of Wisconsin, and have been for many years, and consider that a point of pride within the company.
Great. So a really important part of the community overall. That's awesome. So let's jump into it, and let's talk about the landscape of your business strategy and what you've been looking at over the past few years. As we know, many folks in every industry has really been thinking about digital transformation and somewhat of this, this digital acceleration in the front office and the back office. As a CIO, we're really interested to hear, how has your technology strategy been driven by the business imperatives in the lines of business that you're in?
Well, I think it's important. You touched on something I just want to emphasize. It's imperative that any technology strategy is driven by line of business priorities, right? It's not enough for me to, build toys that nobody wants to play with. It very much is about enabling and empowering the line of business to do more business, to succeed, to meet their goals and objectives. And that's how I view, my role in particular, is to enable our line of business in whatever way possible. And sometimes that's products and services, and sometimes that's efficiencies within the back office to make sure that we're as most cost effective as we can be in various processes. From our standpoint, we've had to certainly address the changing role of the branch in banking. It's becoming, less and less of a transactional hub and more of a relationship space. And so, from a digital transformation perspective, we're focused certainly on helping to enable that transformation. Obviously, COVID has helped us, accelerated some of that shift, to mobile and online and those platforms. I don't think, again, anything is new. It's all just underscoring that, what we're doing is very important, and we need to continue to drive forward. And every day I listen to my line of business partners about what new challenges they may be facing. We listen to our customers to hear the challenges that they're facing. And it's, my job to ensure that we have solutions to accommodate.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely saw at the beginning of the pandemic, there were some organizations that were behind the curve and had panic on how to really figure out remote work. Organizations like yours obviously already had, quite a bit of a strategy in place. And now it seems like everyone has, really moved on from that and is super focused on. So we really do need to digitalize the business. And so what are those things that we're going to address? So, it's I think, as you said, it underscores the priorities that we already had and kind of took away some of the maybe some of the delay on some of those pieces. So speaking of that, not that we want to dive too much into the pandemic side of the world, I understand that your organization was involved in quite a bit, even in, just as you mentioned, helping the community overall. Can you talk a little bit about how your organization responded in the early days and ongoing since then?
Sure, absolutely. So I think in early March, mid-March, we were one of the first financial institutions, especially a financial institution of our size, to close the lobbies, right? So taking a physical action to say, look, we want to protect our community. Let's move to drive-through only. We didn't move to only appointment scheduling right away. I think that came later, but certainly that was obviously still an option, wasn't an option then. But we took an early action, I think, ahead of our peers in that regard, to say, look, we're gonna take a proactive step here. And then obviously from a colleague workforce perspective, in the same time frame, the announcement was, well, if you can work from home, please do so, right? And so overnight, we effectively went from what I'll call 300 corporate locations, which includes our branches, to over 3,000 when you include all of our colleagues. And those are all unique, right? Now, we're dealing with unique internet challenges, environmental challenges, dogs, kids, life, right? It's that, that work-life integration, not necessarily that work-life balance anymore.
Yeah.
And so how do we focus on that? So, I mean, to your point, remote work for us always existed, right? It was more of an exception. And so it was moving beyond that exception. So what does that, really mean for us? Well, that was taking the next step and really focusing on productivity. The people have the right tools in place to be able to do their job effectively. Can we support the logistics, right? So deployment. So not only supporting folks remotely, but logistically, how do we solve problems? How do we ship gear? How do we do those things? And I think we overcame those challenges, relatively early in the process. And I think we responded, quite well. Now, look, I think our colleagues definitely had a cultural shift. People are used to collaborating in person. In Green Bay, where we're headquartered, is a relatively small community overall. Again, people are used to going to work, to a physical place, and meeting and talking with folks. And so the shift initially, was a bit of a cultural shock. And we could actually see this in the amount of support calls we had to take from a help desk perspective. Help me with this, and how do I get this video started?
Yeah.
But we found that literally within 60 days, everything kind of leveled out to what I'll call normal standards, right? People just became, accepting of the fact that this, I don't want to call it the new normal, it is the current normal.
Right.
Because I think a new normal for us is certainly not going to look like this. I mean, we are going to, hopefully at some point get back in the office. Maybe we'll definitely have some folks that maybe don't come back full time. But we want to get together, right, in person and collaborate and have meetings again occasionally, right? Even if it's not 5 days a week, we have to be able to do that. So, for the current normal, I thought our colleagues did a phenomenal job of adjusting, as well as us, providing, the technology solutions to enable, the bank to continue processing at the, high rate that we expect.
Right.
So no doubt it had, had some impact.
Yeah. Yeah, we're hearing similar things from, many of our other customers, whether they're in technology or financial services or, many of the other, especially knowledge-based industries where they expect a return to, some sort of hybrid, where we've changed the way we've we've accelerated some things, and we see that going, for the core office workers, not completely back to the way it was. What about from the business perspective, and some of the work that you did early on? I understand that you were involved in some of the loans from the SBA for the PPP program, and aspects of that, and obviously that was a high demand situation where you had to stand up new technology and new solutions really quickly. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that experience?
Sure. So yeah, on top of everything, right? So literally, you go home for the weekend and you wake up in your house and that's the new normal, or the current normal for you. Then we get a whole new loan program thrust upon us from the SBA, which, you talk about community involvement. Us being involved in PPP was, very important from an executive team perspective, not just technology, not just line of business, but, our CEO, CFO, as a cultural element to what we bring to the community. We felt that being a very active participant in the PPP program was, going to help, our small business, customers really, weather the storm, right? It's still rough out there, no question about it. I mean, clearly it's in our best interest, right? If our customers stay in business, but I think we estimated somewhere around 110,000 jobs were saved by this program. So we started, early, right? The day it launched, we were ready to go.
Right.
We went through the build versus buy decisions like everybody else. And discovered that, just with some slight modifications, we had an internal tool that we developed really to, it's kind of what we'll call a workout tool, for special lending, for special loans. If we just made the right, number of modifications, we could really leverage this as an intake mechanism for this PPP process. And the interesting thing was that this was where I think for the first time, and again, not the first time we deployed it, but for the first time where it was on full display for the bank, where, agile methodology was front and center, right? So this notion of, guys, we don't know all the requirements. They change every day. Oh, and by the way, line of business, we need you directly involved in what we're doing
Right.
now, right? This is not we'll give you a document, a week later you come back with your input, right? You have to make decisions in real time. We're going to make some mistakes, right? We'll make some decisions that have to go back and change. And, I think we deployed, at least in those first 6 weeks, normally, sprint might be 2 or 3 weeks. We were doing releases, multiple times a week.
Yeah.
I think when it was all said and done, I think we ended up with 20 some odd releases of the platform. So, that was certainly key demonstration of our ability to be nimble. But then, just as a plug here for Box, one of the things that we had to do relatively rapidly is certainly we threw some, bodies at this thing, right? We had a tool in the background, but this was not a full, end-to-end self-service model. And we did that by design. We felt that this program, that we really wanted to take, opportunity to reach out to our customers, have a conversation with them. I mean, we obviously wanted to digitize the process as much as possible, beyond that point. But, there still was that personal touch, so we did have a lot of manpower involved. So we wanted to make sure that, from a processing perspective, that we had that process as streamlined as possible and as digitized as possible. And one of the things that, certainly I, as a tenet of our digital transformation is, personalization. I can get into that, in depth here in a bit, but personalized solutions for our customers. Well, in the case of PPP, really what that meant is that we wanted to develop a program that really was a PPP program and not just an SBA program, with a PPP label slapped on it. Meaning we didn't just use kind of the standard SBA paper, right? We used terms that certainly were approved by the SBA, but it really was about the PPP loans. We didn't talk about things like collateral. You don't need collateral for these. They effectively were grants. But to get all this in place and to get these loan packages out the door, we enlisted a third-party legal firm to help us, put these loan packages together. And so the first question was, well, how do we automate the process of delivering these documents in a way that's universal, in a way that's just a push button click away for our colleagues to send materials over, and then how do we engage our customers in a way where they're pretty hands off, right? They just have to go in, open something, sign it, and send it back. And Box was, the mechanism we leveraged to facilitate that process. And again, a lot of our peer banks, maybe they partnered with the big four fintechs to deliver solutions. Those are very genericized solutions. Some big banks, including BMO Harris, did that. Mm-hmm. And again, we just felt that, look, while most of these loans will certainly be forgiven, there was no doubt that some wouldn't be. And we wanted to make sure that from a bank's perspective, that it was on paper that we felt supported our aims as a bank, right? We wanted to make sure that it was not just some generic loan package that had to be reworked or explained or confused our customers. It was literally designed around PPP, which our customers greatly appreciated, right? They didn't have any apprehension. They understood what they were getting into. It was we got a lot of positive feedback from our customer base that not only did we get the solution up and running quickly, it was the right solution, right? It was, this made sense. I feel good about taking advantage of this program through the bank, which was fantastic. And we did about 9,000 loans, so a significant amount, over $1 billion. So very proud of the work that our teams did, again, on top of everything else, right? So we're just talking about learning a new way to work. And on top of that, you're doing it in a remote environment and having to stand up a loan program very quickly.
Right. Well, it's a great story. You had, the taking a different approach or really kind of customizing the offering you had. So it wasn't just the cookie cutter offering from the SBA. You had some technology pieces in there, and I do want to get back to that and talk about some of the technology things. But another part that I thought was really interesting was the, just your change in actually the process that you use for doing this, going to a much more agile method, having the line of business more engaged on it. And I'm curious if you feel that those sort of changes might endure after this in the way that you stand up projects in the future, and if that's an interesting learning for folks in the audience.
Well, certainly. I mean, look, we aren't the first, bank to embark on an agile journey of any sorts, right? And this wasn't our first, usage of agile methodology. But as I mentioned, it was the first kind of effort that really had company visibility, right, as opposed to just maybe one or two departments. I mean, all eyes were on us to see, can we stand this thing up in such short order? And deliver. And I think, people were able to see, well, hey, they can really react. I mean, those SBA requirements were very nebulous, right? People didn't know what was going on. Every day they were changing. Absolutely. This, is kind of a proof point to say that, yes, this really does work. And I think more importantly, from a line of business perspective, they understood, hey, this actually requires quite a bit of our involvement, right? This is not, agile is not just a technology, methodology. It's not just about something in IT that says in IT. No, it's about this collaboration, having these cross-functional teams, and the power of being able to make a rapid decision. I think if you take, anything away from it, it was the importance of clear communication, of timely communication. It's amazing what can get done. And again, we weren't physically together, but it's amazing what can get done when you have this virtual team. Yeah. You have the right subject matter experts, and they're empowered to make decisions. Yeah. And you can apply that to anything, right? If you get the right people that are on the ground, empowered to make decisions to move forward, I think you can really make any process more nimble, right? We leverage agile, but really, I think we kind of said, look, why don't we apply these same learnings to really anything we're doing, right? When we interact, can we get the right people involved early that can make decisions? because we find that we end up, wasting a lot of time, waiting for somebody to decide on something. People sometimes are afraid to make a mistake. This other notion that, hey, it's okay if you do something and it's not right, you can go back and fix it. The world didn't end.
Yep.
I'm not saying that, every solution is that cavalier, but the point being is that, again, if you can deploy rapidly and make changes, it's okay to say you don't have it 100% right the first time out, right? That you can increment and have it be, get to your end state over time.
Yeah.
And that was certainly in full display. So that's kind of the learnings that I think that we've taken and demonstrated across, even beyond just this particular effort, even beyond other IT efforts, just the way people act and think and say, wow, we need to really start empowering people in the decision process.
Yeah, I think that will be an enduring change. I know that there was a lot of companies that are hesitant about sending people home, and would they be as productive or anything? But by and large, I heard many people say that if you have good people that know what they're supposed to do, then they're going to make it work. And they really learned a lot about just the human interaction and how everything works from there. So let's pivot maybe to technology. And as I do that, I do want to remind the audience, feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A, and we can curate those and get some of them here. But Mike, I wanted to maybe talk a little bit more deeper on the technology side, especially looking towards the future. Because I think one of the things, as we look at, what we all now see as the new normal, I think maybe some of our priorities have shifted. Some have stayed the same. But in many ways, I think everyone is taking this chance to reassess a number of things for the future. So, when you're looking forward, to 2021 and 2022 and beyond there, what are some of the things right now that you're looking for from your technology partners to help you meet the challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's flexibility, right? And that may be a bit of a cliche, but this notion of, again, being able to adapt a solution, to a particular problem is key. And so whether that's through APIs, maybe a very flexible user interface, whatever it is, look, I think from our standpoint, we have to have technology and leverage technology platforms that aren't just a, built for purpose, single use type of solution, right? They have to, be able to be used in ways that maybe you can't even think of at the moment. As we continue down our journey, what's certainly is certain is that there's going to be uncertainty, right? We're not going to know what's coming next, and so are we, partnering with firms and with technologies that are going to allow us to pivot if we need to, whether that's to changing customer needs or a pandemic, right? I mean, we have to have, like, again, solutions in place that can adapt to that changing environment. Mm-hmm. And so, for us, it really is about the flexibility, and talk about configuration versus customization. But, we are, all in on, developing API frameworks. Data for us is key. Or I talked about personalization earlier. People will say data is the new oil. There's no question about that, in my view. Right. The ability to leverage and get access, universal access, and most importantly, to data stores is a key tenet of where we're headed. We're well on that journey. We've invested in technology platforms to assist us with that, and they all have one thing in common, right? They're flexible, they're malleable, they allow us to connect to many other different systems. They don't pigeonhole us into some sort of proprietary communication pathway. That's also very key. We just don't know what two things we want to talk to one another, right, in the future. And I think that's what people have to understand, right? It's old things to new things is always exists, but new things to new things is easy. New things to old things can be hard, and then especially old things to old things. Leveraging a new thing in between to get those two things to talk to one another, right? And so that's that's kind of the foundation of the strategy and approach we're going to be taking here in the months to come. I mean, any experience we deliver to our customers, we want to have some sort of personalized experience beyond the login. I mean, I've said this before, but yes, we compete against other banks, right? But from a digital experience perspective, we compete against, everybody's day-to-day digital experience, right? Google, Facebook, Netflix, Facebook, Amazon, PayPal, right? So, and not just from a financial perspective, but those are very engaging platforms, right? They get this level of engagement from their customers for a reason. And look, we're not looking for Cambridge Analytica level of engagement in our platform, but what we are looking to do is make sure that when people beyond the login, people feel like, well, you kind of know who I am, right. And you're offering products and services that demonstrate that I'm not just a number to you in this financial institution. And better yet, if we can help educate our customers on their own financial well-being and health and help them with their goals, even better. I talked about this before this call, but it's a changing role of the branch, right? And I talked about it being kind of this relationship hub. One of the things that we learned coming out of this experience here, or we are learning through this experience, is that people are going to want their interactions, even in that relationship building, to be very efficient.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to even augment the physical with the digital to make sure that when they do sit down and interact with a banker by appointment or whatever, that should be a very efficient interaction. I don't want to be wasting a lot of time. That's not going away, right? I don't think anybody here is going to be surprised to learn that transactions are waning in the branches. But that relationship hub, that'll be there. But how efficient does that interaction have to be? Well, it's going to have to be increasingly efficient.
Yeah.
They'll interact with our branch. Branches are still important, but people are going to want to get in and get out, regardless, even if they're not transacting, right? If it is some sort of advice or whatever it is, how do we make sure that interaction is as efficient as possible?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard so many customers, regardless of what industry they're in, say exactly what you said with regards to the digital experience. It's that we're not competing against the digital experience of our competitors. We're competing against the digital experience of an Amazon or a Netflix or something like that. And how do they do that? And the whole point about flexibility, and especially being able to connect old to new and new to old and all the different pieces, is super complicated. In a lot of cases, but sometimes everyone's kind of refiguring the whole core solution. On the technology side, you mentioned Box a little bit earlier, for communicating with the legal teams and the loan process and everything. I would love to hear, in your words, how what role Box has played in supporting your ability to adapt and evolve in this world.
Sure. Well, I mean, first and foremost, the ability to leverage, your APIs has been huge, right? So now we're taking, a functionality and, for lack of a better term, sewing it into a product that certainly is not some sort of, commercial off-the-shelf standard product. It's something we built internally for a completely different use.
Yeah.
But with, technologies like APIs and the fact that, Box is a very robust set of APIs, it was easy for us to integrate what seems to be relatively simple functionality of just document distribution, right? Yep. But everything that goes behind that, right? The security, just the consistency, the repudiation of the data itself between two entities, all that you kind of take for granted. Well, the easiest thing was it was easy for us to kind of hook into Box's robust platform, and then dealing with a third party that we'd actually had done some work with in the past, but nothing at this scale. Well, they know Box, right? So for them, it was easy too, right? That's critically important, is that as we bring in more diverse, partners, right? The financial landscape, right, is constantly evolving, and you have no idea who you're going to be doing business with one day or the next. And because of that, you have to have some common ground, some common languages that you can all speak, so that you can, actually develop solutions that, maybe take you in ways you never would have thought possible before.
Yeah.
And that's really the difference, right? This whole notion of, proprietary solutions, bank in the box, everything's going to be contained in this one little area. I mean, those days are just over. I mean, people are going to be diverse in their partners. And we have to really think about ecosystems and platforms and not just point solutions.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. So let's start pivoting and talking a little bit about the future. And Ian, I understand we have a question maybe from the audience that might be a good,
Yeah,
good segue
thanks,
to that.
Rand. We've got a nice question from Nancy asking, do you expect to see employees returning to physical work or remaining remote? If technology has adapted to remote work, the need to return to an office seems to fade away.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Nancy. So the way I've answered is this. I do see employees getting back together physically, occasionally. What I don't see though, this 5 day a week, I'm sitting in a cube and attending meetings. Those days are gone. Where I see us evolving, and we're actually talking about this right now as an executive team, is that we want to change our spaces to be a lot more focused on collaboration. Because when people do get together, right, and at least within our footprint, we're hearing, getting feedback from our colleagues. Hey, at some point, we'd like to get back together physically, if only occasionally, to have just discuss things like jazz sessions from a technology perspective. Having a meeting where I can get all the right subject matter experts together in a room to kind of whiteboard something. Yes, all those things can be done digitally. In fact, we've had to do them digitally, but occasionally there's definitely a desire for folks to want to get together in person to hash some things out. Sometimes discussions over a cup of coffee are way more powerful than discussions over a Skype or a Teams meeting, right? So I do think though that you're not going to see this again 5 days a week type of desire, but certainly occasionally, and so we got to prepare for that. So that means you got to have flexible workspaces. You're not going to necessarily assign everybody to a cube anymore or assign them to an office, but you got to have the space available should they need it, should they want to interact. And then are you creating productive and I should say efficient collaboration spaces so that those that want to get physically together, we're enabling that behavior.
Yeah. And one of the tricks is is you have some people in physical and some people remote, trying to figure out a seamless experience so that you don't have the times of the past where you'd have a bunch of people in a meeting and then one person remote that felt like they were so disconnected from the island it was impossible to really collaborate very well. So let's talk about the future overall then. And you've talked a lot about the role of the branch and then moving from the transactional model to the relationship banking. You've talked about some of those needs in that model. But what are some other customer expectations that you think are changing, and how will you all be adapting to that from a technology perspective in the future?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So, I mean, I think our customers, first and foremost, what they're expecting is that there's, from a digital experience perspective, that there's one bank. I will say we are not there yet, right? We have several different mobile apps for different functions, as an example. We got to get to kind of this one-stop shop. And it's not that I feel that you have to have full capabilities, let's say in one mobile app, but people want to know, right? They want to be able to look at their relationship with the bank in one place. So it's just, let's take balance information as an example, right? So if I have a retirement account, if I have, a loan, if I have a DDA, we do a lot of, from a retail perspective, we do a pretty good job of putting the retail items together. But we have, small business owners. We have commercial customers that also have retail relationships. Those lines are blurred, right? They wanted to say, well, look, who I am. Just why can't I see, all parts of my relationship with this bank in one place? Now they fully understand that, if I, let's say, want to make a, investing, change of some sort, maybe that's a little more complicated. I go somewhere else to do that, but at least give me a sense of what my relationship with you looks like.
Right.
And as I mentioned, before, this personalization aspect of saying, well, a couple of things I expect out of my bank. For first and foremost, right, offer products and services that are actually relevant to me, right? Don't make me an algorithm, but truly understanding my, spending habits. Recommend products and services that reflect my age and stage and my spending habits and who I am in particular.
Yeah.
And then, beyond that, the value add, because they're getting this right from the fintechs, is, show me what's next. Help me prevent me from making a mistake. Right. That's the other thing is, can you provide some insights to me that I'm not even asking for about my behaviors. So for example, like, hey, did you know that you spent, and this is probably not appropriate anymore given our circumstances, but prior to COVID, you're spending $350 a month at Starbucks, right? Well, that's important insight. We're just letting you know that, right? And if you have some savings goals, is that congruent with what you're trying to achieve from a savings perspective? Or, hey, if you made these behavioral changes, you'd be able to pay your loan off 10 years faster, and doing that proactively, right? Without having the customer have to ask for it.
Right.
The other element that we see is definitely an expectation is self-service, right? You can talk about it being millennial or Gen Z. Look, nobody wants to talk to people anymore, right? And so they want to be able to be empowered to solve their own problems. Now that has to be done efficiently. This isn't about taking big monolithic processes and foisting them upon customers and saying, "No, you deal with it." It's saying that if I have a process to go through, I want to be able to control it, say a dispute process, and have that be very simplistic and smooth and easy to understand, and I know where things are at, but I can initiate everything from my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think honestly, when we talk about digital, right, we're really talking about mobile. We've seen, at least from our perspective, online banking has actually dropped from an interaction perspective by double digits, and mobile has increased by double digits. It's not surprising. It's a trend that was already in place, but it certainly has been accelerated. People have their phones everywhere. And so, they want to bring, all that functionality, all that power has to be, literally in the palm of their hand. And that definitely includes self-service. They want to feel empowered to control, service items, not have to, talk to somebody on the phone to try to solve a problem for them. So, and that's, when we kind of get back to this need to have these platforms that can communicate in multiple levels, it's very hard to solve self-service, which is typically operational, right? And typically, some proprietary back office, if you don't have that flexibility, because either you have all of your services with one vendor, okay, then maybe it's easy, but that's just not the real world. A bank our size will, quite frankly, just wouldn't be a wise strategy.
Right.
We're going to have best-in-class vendors all over the place, right? We're going to have startups. We're going to have more mature fintechs. They all have to be able to communicate to one another. And so that's where, again, the platforms have to be flexible, because solving self-service is going to involve multiple systems, typically multiple different groups. And again, the hamsters can be running around the wheel behind the scenes, but you can't be exposing that to customers.
Yeah, that's a really good view of it. It looks like we might have another question. If Ian, if you want to break in.
Yeah, thanks, Rand. We've got a question from Ryan asking, could you elaborate on the need for an ecosystem of partners versus bank-in-a-box type offerings, and why those types of solutions no longer work?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it a little bit. When you're trying to solve complex problems, right? Chances are, throughout your bank's history, you've leveraged multiple solutions to solve a particular problem. And so if you've done that, you've got to be able to reach into multiple systems, completely unrelated systems, to deliver and stitch together a workflow that may span multiple departments, multiple organizations. It's typically impossible to do that with kind of bank-in-the-box solutions, because historically their whole business model has been, well, we need to get more of our services, right? You fully committed to more of our services. So they make things, they speak in some proprietary language, right? And so only this thing can only talk to this thing in this way. And so you're kind of forced to be committed, to leverage their platform and be more dependent on it. But the challenge with that is that, quite frankly, if you look at the big four providers as an example, they're not as innovative as the smaller guys, right? So you want to be able to take advantage of the innovation that's out in, out in Silicon Valley, out in New York. Every day we hear about how, banking's being cannibalized, one bite at a time, as, Silicon Valley takes customer experience as first, second, and third priority, and says, well, I don't really care what the rules are. I just want to provide an excellent customer experience. And from our perspective, look, we know we're not going to get all the innovation internally, right? Our innovation, a big part of our innovation strategy is to partner with people that are, quite frankly, smarter than us when it comes to certain customer experience elements. Well, how do you work with them if you're dealing in these big monolithic proprietary systems? Where these systems were never designed to be leveraged outside of their own internal ecosystem, right? Which is great for the big four, right? But not so good from the customer perspective that's trying to again stitch multiple things together.
Cool. And then maybe to look even further into the future, using either your crystal ball or your CIO sort of wish list. Building on that, what are some of the capabilities do you think that banks, technology partners like Box and others in the ecosystem should be thinking about, for the next 5 or 10 years? You've talked a lot about APIs and you've talked about mobile and all those different pieces. Is there anything that you see further out that's you think really going to be needed to get to the next level?
IT, kind of expertise, right? And how do we start delivering those same kind of powerful capabilities to people that maybe don't have the technical background? And so that's going to involve, I think, a bit of a redesign in some cases of, from a workflow management perspective, to say, look, we got actually to provide tools and capabilities that a line of business power user could use, and I don't need IT at all. It's, honestly, that's what I kind of see in the next 5 to 10 years is this, lessening of the technical acumen required, to solve problems.
Yeah, actually, we're seeing a big trend in that as well, where people want to be able to empower more, if you call it democratic development or citizen development, or just things where people can use technology to speed up their own job. Great. Well, this has been really good. Ian, do we have any other questions we want to talk about right now?
We have a question from Nate about how many touchdowns will the Badgers win by this weekend? I don't know if you want to answer that question or not.
No, I will answer because it'll be 0 because it's unfortunately the game got canceled for this upcoming weekend due to COVID. I mean, COVID's taken everything. It's taken football away from me. So unfortunately that game is not going to happen. But look, had they played it, I would have expected a score somewhere around 45-14, just to give or take a touchdown.
And that's all the questions we have time for today, I think.
Cool. Glad we got that one on the recording. Well, Mike, anything else you want to share? Any other thoughts for your peers and execs for the time ahead?
Well, I mean, look, this is a crisis. There's no other way to describe it, and never let a good crisis go to waste. It's a phrase that we can use internally here. Use it, leverage it to push forward your digital agenda. Again, I don't anticipate that there's anything new, that people necessarily are doing because of COVID, but how do you accelerate what you already had planned, right? Can you get it done sooner? Leverage this opportunity. I know it's something that we look to do every day. Yeah, it's great. Awesome. Well, Mike, this has been fantastic. Really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. No problem.
And all of your insights.